Hello, my name is Dale Mahalko, and I'm doing some documentation of a little old electric vehicle from the late 1970s known as the Sebring Vanguard CitiVan. This company made electric vehicles during the 70s when there was the oil embargo, energy crisis, and all that. Everyone was all concerned about energy costs, and so he had this idea of coming up with a electric vehicle for the masses. There really wasn't anything else available at the time, so he tried to get this going. Although he was just a tiny little company, so this thing does not look like any normal vehicle. It's basically just a box and a wedge on the front, and it is street legal. It has the bare minimum of capabilities to be a street legal and licensed vehicle. It's got turn signals, backup light, parking lights, headlights, and all that. So it is a functional street legal vehicle, but for today, it basically compares to a golf cart in speed and performance. The top speed of this was about 35 miles an hour. They claimed 40, but that is a real stretch. It does not really have enough power for that. It also only has a range of about 35 to 40 miles. So the idea was that this would be a vehicle that you would drive around town on the suburban roads and back and forth to the local grocery store, hardware store, just a little vehicle to get around town. You would not take this out on the freeway because it just cannot get up to road speed compared to all the other vehicles. So the performance was not great, and your expectations for this also could not be exactly that great either. There's just a lot of weird little things about this vehicle. One thing that we are discovering here is that this particular style here, known as the CitiVan, was rare because getting up to the late 1970s, his company was starting to get into trouble, and so this is actually a later version. The early version did not have a rear window. It cut off pretty much right behind the driver's seat. This one is like an extended cab, you might say, and it appears that there weren't very many of this made. There were perhaps only 10 of these made before his company went bankrupt. And then some other fellow bought them up, and he then tried to rebuild them into something else, which he then sold for a while, called the commuter car. So this is like a transition between the first version in the early 70s and the commuter car coming out after it. Part of the changes was to make it have more performance. The early ones had like about a 3 horsepower motor. I believe this one has either a 5 or 6 horsepower motor. The early ones also, they did not, I think I saw somewhere they had like side curtains that were vinyl, whereas this has actual sliding windows that open to the side. Then the later one that came out, the commuter car, that actually had roll down windows like a standard vehicle. So this is actually kind of a rare vehicle, but the problem that I'm finding is that because it's rare, there isn't much information about it. I can find documentation for the early version, the Citicar, and there were different versions of that. There was a 36 volt and a 48 volt version. This one, I am not really finding anything about it. This is actually a different way of doing things in this one. The early ones used 6 volt dash accessories and so forth, and they used 8 6-volt batteries for 48 volts. This one, however, has a separate 12-volt battery for the accessories and then 8 batteries for the motor. So it's a little more complicated. I don't know if that was just for better reliability. So it's got some mileage on it here. If I look at the odometer, let's see. Looks like, I don't quite know how to read that, but it looks like 98 miles. So, it didn't get a lot of use. Someone drove it around town a couple times and like, yeah, I'm done with that. So, this just pretty much sat in like a garage for about 40 years or so. Here's the serial number on the side here. 703SN0005. So this was number 5 of those 10 or so that were made. And looking around in here, I don't know what is original and what may have been from someone else experimenting with maybe making changes to this. I don't know if it came like this originally or if someone was trying to modify it. So anyway, the battery box is under the seat here. Now lift this out of the way. Take a look in there. And there's room on this side for 4 batteries right here. And then there's room on the other side for 4 batteries right there. And then there's a spot right in the middle right here where a 12-volt battery would have gone here. Now, the way this is constructed with this styrofoam and these wood blocks, this does not look original to me. This looks like someone trying to hack this for some reason. If I look underneath here in the bottom, I can see that there's a hole right about here where there's a bolt to secure the batteries into the battery compartment, but it's covered up here. So to me, none of this is original. All of this should be pulled out, you know, so we expose that hole and we can run the battery retainer in here. And also, that is another thing with this. If you were in a collision in this and you've got golf cart batteries, you are potentially going to get splashed with sulfuric acid if those batteries crack or if the vehicle rolls over. So using actual golf cart batteries really does not look like the safest idea. There are batteries that we use for emergency power supplies and so forth that are called gel cell batteries. Those do not spill if they are tipped over or if the case cracks. So that would be the safer route to go for this if there were in an accident. But the gel cell batteries cost more than the standard batteries, and I don't think they make them as large as these were. These batteries are almost like a foot tall. I've not seen gel cells this large, and they would probably be quite expensive. So probably going to have to put in smaller batteries if gel cells are used, and it's not going to have the range, of course, if we don't have the same size. However, at this point, this is probably just going to be a project car. It's never actually going to get on the road and used as originally intended. It's probably never going to go 40 miles an hour. So it's fine if it has smaller batteries in it. The only real issue is having the full amperage capability to run the motor, and I don't see any problem with that using gel cells. Now, if I look at the city cars before this, their wiring diagrams, they are not laid out the way that this space is. The standard wiring diagram for a city car shows the batteries spread evenly across the middle. And from doing research in forums, the original one did not have air cooling for the motor. Some of the early ones had no cooling at all. The motor was completely sealed, which is strange. But in this one, they have air cooling. This tubing actually passes through the motor underneath, and there's a fan to blow air through the motor, and none of this is in any of the documentation I've seen for city cars. So I basically have to just figure out my own circuit diagram for this. So it's quite a challenge mapping all this out, and part of the reason that I'm putting this on YouTube is because I figure that there are going to be 10 other people out there that happen to have this vehicle, and they may need help trying to figure it out. So this is probably about the only videos you're ever going to see for information on the CitiVan. So I hope this might be helpful to someone else.